If you need to be quarantined,
thanks.
We are all prostitutes. I think, was it Vivienne Westwood who coined that phrase, we're all prostitutes? There were loads of t-shirts like that. It was all the punk fashion and all the rest of it. And then it had the face of Lady Thatcher behind. But I think Vivienne Westwood, she hated her. To her, and half the country, she destroyed the country. She was a very hateful figure. She certainly destroyed the Sex Pistols that they have helped to create. I mean, it was so chaotic in the late 70s, and it creates a new trend and a new fashion. And Thatcher destroyed it all. Destroyed that anarchy from which I culturally feed on and have fed myself all my life with. I've interviewed Vivienne Westwood in the 90s but wasn't convinced. However, I did meet Lady Thatcher and we spent 15 delightful minutes together. I just could not believe how nice she was. She has been to me. She had by then left Downing Street. It was a casual event, a charity dinner gala after a concert by Jane Birkin. Her own mother, Jane Birkin's mother, was a close friend to the lady. I did meet her daughter Carol and her husband Dennis all at the same time, and it was really bewildering, nice but bewildering.
Most of us are Thatcherites to some extent, albeit there is such a thing as society. I admired her guts. Like Mrs. Thatcher, I was nearly killed in the Brighton bomb in 1984. I was a senior executive at the BBC at the time. I left the Grand Hotel at 2:30 a.m. The bomb went off at 2:54 a.m. I directed the BBC camera showing Mrs. Thatcher outside Brighton police station at 6 a.m. I was one of the few people who stood near her as she strode onto the platform at 9:30 a.m. The words "Rule Britannia" ran through every sinew of Mrs. Thatcher's body. Her brand of right-wing conservatism had two elements, economic and nationalistic. Together, they would produce a chemical reaction that would revolutionise Britain. The economic. Mrs. Thatcher was an economic purist. She hated the Keynesian economics of one nation Toryism. In her gut, she always rejected it, even though she served in the One Nation cabinet led by Ted Heath. Thatcher's quest was Britain for the British, Britain first. Her idea of Rule Britannia was free market economics. The freer the better. The smaller the state, the better. Out went the nationalised industries. In came privatisation and tax cuts. Mrs. Thatcher was also a latter-day empirist. She was a fierce defender of the crown, above all Britain's sovereignty. The Argentines' invasion of the Falklands was a red rag to a bull, to a bulldog. She had no choice. Britain could not be kicked around by foreigners. Rule Britannia was at stake. So she fought, and she won. Her instincts were validated, emboldened. Her instincts led her to another inevitable battle. After the war, this time another war with the European Union. The words encroachment and appeasement started to ring in her ears. She fiercely defended the pound. She rejected the euro. She denounced monetary and fiscal union. In many ways, she was the architect of Brexit. Her cry was always, "Take back control," long before the slogan was invented. Rule Britannia, rule Britannia, rule Britannia. In many ways, the political dominance of Mrs. Thatcher in the wake of the Falklands War, especially, started to give her illusions of grandeur. A great monarchist herself, in the wake of the Falklands War especially, Mrs. Thatcher started to give herself illusions of grandeur. A great monarchist herself, she began to act like royalty and to use the royal we, and to start behaving like the Queen, or at least head of state. This delusion revealed a truth, unpalatable, hurtful, but real. In Rule Britannia, only one person can do no wrong. Only one person is revered. Only one person is truly loved. The monarch, the Queen, Queen and country, King and country, long to rule over us. God save the Queen. God save the Queen.